Looking back over all the test drives and reviews that I've done, I can honestly say I've never got so excited the night before that I've struggled to sleep. But today's a very special day, and judging by the black bags under my eyes, I can tell you that the car we're driving today is very, very special. Because today, we're going to have a look at the Porsche Taycan. Now this isn't just any old Taycan, this is the Turbo edition. I know Turbo sounds very odd when you're talking about an electric car, but Porsche have decided to keep their model branding the same throughout. So it starts off at about £70,000 for the base model, that's your 4, and it goes all the way up to the Turbo S, which is crazy money, up 140 plus thousand pounds. This Turbo, it starts life at about 115,000, but Porsche being Porsche, you don't want just what it comes with. There'll be a few little extras that I'll talk about as we go around that you want on that car. So this car, with all the extras it's got on, is around about £140,000. And while I'm not a great fan of cars being in white, I think, well, this is the colour to have. If you look back to when this was a concept car in 2015, it was called the Mission E, and they showed it everywhere in this lovely white with these lovely rims that had some white in them, and it looked stunning. And I think it's fair to say that the design has carried through from that Mission E into the car that goes on the road. It's about as close as you'll get from a concept car to a road-going car. And, well, it's very modern Porsche, but there is no doubt about it. If the badges weren't on this car, you would know straight away this was a Porsche. The little things like the bonnet design and the tail end, there's all those kind of 911-y kind of design cues that you just know this is a Porsche, there's no question about it. So let's have a look around and see what we think from the outside, starting with the side here. I think it's fair to say that when you look at the side, it's dominated by these big 20-inch black alloys, especially against the white of the car we've got here. Behind there, there's some big white calipers, and the brake discs themselves, they're not steel, they're kind of a halfway point between steel and carbon. They've got a coating on them, which will hopefully, when you consider the speeds that this thing is capable of and the weight, this is nearly 2.5 tons, I think it's about 2.3. It's going to need all the help it can get. But all that weight is very low down. The battery's on the floor as you expect. But well, we'll see when we get inside. You'll see how it's been designed so it doesn't feel like a lot of electric cars where you really are sat on top of a battery. You do sit inside this, but we'll look at that later. Otherwise, we see a charging flap here. Interestingly, one on each side, which it makes life a lot easier. And then there's this nice black cutout here, the trim, the black trim against the white on the wing mirror. And then, I don't know if the camera will show it very well, but there's a crease here, and it comes in and there's this lovely fold that comes out down to this white strip at the bottom. The contrast of it is really nice when you see it, and in the light it catches it. It gives it what could be a very plain white side. There's so much to look at, it's really nice. You'll see the handles at the moment, they're sticking out. When we're driving, they go flush to the side, so it keeps it nice and aerodynamic. This is the most drag coefficient car that Porsche have ever made. So it's maybe not up there with the Teslas just yet, but they are doing what they can to get every little bit of energy from that battery to get you as far as possible. And then round the back, well, this is Porsche, isn't it? There's no getting away from it. This light strip across here, this back end, this is very modern Porsche. This section where the roof comes down into this rear window, there's no question that is a design cue. That's come straight out of a 911. It looks, you could just cut all this off and show me that and I'd know that this is a Porsche. But this modern Porsche design, I love this. The 911, you know, it was one of those cars, it's iconic. Everybody knows what it looks like. It's been the same forever. But it's been just updated. It was time to have a revamp, and they've done that recently, haven't they? And I think they've done an absolutely brilliant job. So as I said, this light bar really sets it off. You've got Porsche inset in here, Taycan Turbo, telling the world that you haven't just got a basic Porsche, and the way that this white works against this black with these fins and. Just look at it. It's one of the nicest looking, nicest designed cars I think I've seen. And if you like the back, come and look at the front. And it really is so pretty from the front. This is like something out of a computer game, isn't it? Look at those matrix lights, how they just dominate the front end of it. Under here, you've got this two-tone effect where it's going to allow some air in to cool bits and pieces underneath. And these scoops on the side that direct air straight onto the brakes to keep them cool so that they keep working well. I am really lost for words, and that's unusual. It's such a pretty car. Okay, that's enough drooling. Let's get on to some of the important things. Let's look at the charging, shall we? Now on the side of the car here at the front wing, you will find a CCS charging port. Nothing unusual about that. But the headline here is this isn't just your usual DC 50 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt charger. This will charge at 270 kilowatts. That's 80% in about 20 minutes. That's a ridiculous speed. When you think it wasn't that long ago that we were buying cars that we thought were rapid charging at 50 kilowatts, this is pushing the boundaries beyond any of that. The only downside is trying to find a charger that will do that at the moment. There's very, very few and far between. But to help you when you are at a charger, not only do you get this charging flap on the near side, you get exactly the same on the off side. So however you pull in, you'll be able to get your cable in there and get charging up. And luggage wise, well, up front we've got 81 litres under what would be the bonnet with a nice little cubby hole there to store some bits and pieces in. And back here we've got a boot with 366 litres, which for what Porsche describe as a sports car, I think that's quite generous. And you'll see it, although it's narrow, it goes back quite a long way. We've got, as we see in a lot of cars now, a little extra cubby hole under here which the charging cables are in, and a couple of little holes down the side. So what they've done is they've taken the space that they've been able to afford at the back here and make best use of it. And getting into this car, well, quite clearly that beautiful design from outside continues in here. If you've looked in the new 911, you'll recognise an awful lot of this internal dash. It's exactly the same. But what you also get, which is something that's very difficult with electric vehicles, is you get a feeling that you're sat right down in the car. The problem is batteries sit very high. They always go on the floor because they're so heavy. So car manufacturers try to get the weight distribution as low as possible so that the 2.3 tons you're dragging around, you don't feel because it's all nice and low down. The result is normally your seat comes up higher, so you feel like you're looking out on the road. You don't get that in here. You are definitely sat down in this car. This is a sports car. And front and centre, as you would expect, is this lovely Porsche steering wheel. It's leather coated, it's got minimal buttons on it. Particularly, I do like this drive mode, this toggle. It feels very expensive. And it tells you, right, you're in a sports car now, you tell me what you want me to do, I'll do it. All you have to do is twist the knob. Everything about this tells you this is a driver's car. If you get into a normal car, you'll find the steering wheel's almost tilted slightly forward. Everything is designed to be nice and comfortable and relaxed. If you get into something like a rally car or a race car, the steering wheel is bang on centre. It's sat upright so that you can get your driving position exactly right with maximum feedback, and you can react quickly to things. And that's where this steering wheel is. And then beyond the steering wheel, this bezel-less design around all these dials. Everything in here is a screen. There's nothing analog apart from this dial up the top. You can change everything on here. It's really quick and easy to see. I love these hotkeys just around the outside, so I can instantly change maybe my suspension setup, put the lights on and off. I can even set some up to do what I want to do, a personal setup, but it's all around there. I've got 3 settings for my driving position, so if between 2 or 3 of you driving this, just press the button and it will remember your settings. Coming around here, I've got a second screen in the middle which gives me all my information about driving, about the car. There is an optional extra to have another screen here for the passenger, which you can watch movies and all sorts on. It's a slave to this one, but it is independent in what it does. So it's an optional extra you can have. There's lots of optional extras you can have, obviously. And then we got the screen here, which all my heating controls are on it. There's a tracker pad. Not sure whether the tracker pad's really needed because everything in here is touchscreen, but it's there. It's an option for you. What they've done here is they've taken a minimal design and they've added the important things. It's like the designers have got in and they've said, right, modern cars need to be minimal. Everything has to be, pare everything back. So they've turned that minimalistic dial right down and they've gone, do you know what, actually we need some soul to this car. We need a bit of something else to it. Just tweak that dial up a little bit, and that's what we've got now. It's a very, very expensive looking and feeling. There's no doubt, don't get me wrong, you pay for this car, but there's no doubt you get quality in this car everywhere you look. They've got the balance absolutely spot on. And from a practicality point of view, well, we've got some small door pockets here. There's a little bottle of Coke in there, it'll fit. We've got this armrest with some storage underneath here. couple of cup holders that will actually take a decent sized bottle or cup. We've got a bit of storage under here. It's not really dropped in, so probably will slide off of there, but I'm sure you can find something to put in there. And glove box wise, yeah, we'll say no more about that. But other than that, up here, it's what it's designed to be. They keep telling us it's a sports car. They've given us a sports car, so that's what we've got. Now then, in the back, this particular one hasn't had the third seat optional extra. So all you get here is an armrest, a couple of cup holders in, and a bit of a tray here. You can put some bits and pieces. But like the front, the seats are very, very comfortable. You've got this lovely branding on them. It just, again, screams quality back here. The doors they're not simplistic at all. There's a real design features gone into this. Everything from the handle to the armrests here, and right down into the speakers, Bose stereo all round in here. Room wise in the back, well, again, this is supposed to be a sports car. I'm 5'9", my driving position is set here. I've got loads of room here. Now, the seat doesn't get up under my knees. That's another feature of electric cars, with the battery being a bit higher, but I'm able to sit right back in this chair and it does hug me. This panoramic roof that you don't really notice much when you're driving in the front is amazing back here. I could see on a long journey, just sitting back and looking at the world above as I'm driving along. It just opens everything up to you, especially this quite dark lining. There's very dark materials in here. This just lets all the light in. But my favourite feature back here is this little touch screen down here. Now you get to play with your climate control in the back, and it's almost a mirror image of the front. So you can do exactly the same. You're able to not only just tell it to blow some air in the back, but actually manually adjust where that air is going. So if I go into the menu, I get two little dots, and I can tell it, I want that air to blow exactly in that spot for me. And it's a beautiful screen. They've put as much into that little screen as they have into the screens at the front, so you can really control everything you've got back here. And just under the seat here, there's a couple of USB-C charging points just to finish everything off. So a sports car that's actually got some room in the back. I'm already feeling that this is probably more of a baby GT than an all-out sports car. But let's go and have a drive and see if that's the case. As soon as you get in this car, the driving position that I spoke about, it just comes alive. And I mean quite literally comes alive. The seat and the steering wheel and everything adjusts itself to the position that you've set. It doesn't just go forward and backwards though, it wraps itself around your sides, it hugs you in. And then the seat belt, it's got a little motor up in here and the tensioner, and it just pulls you in, just tugs you nice and secure. It's like it gives you a hug and says, don't worry mate, I've got you here, let's go and have some fun. And from this position that you're seated in, the dials and everything, you can customize them. Of course you can. You can tell it exactly what you want. There's 3 different dials here in front of me. I can change every one of those to exactly what I want. Battery wise, this has got an 84 kilowatt hour battery. That's usable. It's bigger than that. It's 93 or something. But you can't use it all because of course they need a little bit that they can protect the battery life. So they use that. So that's what you've got that's usable. And range wise, well, it is a Friday afternoon at the moment and I am doing a lot of follow my leader, sort of 55 miles an hour. At those sort of speeds, this is giving me an indication that I'm going to do well over 200 miles. So I think everyday driving, you can expect easily 200 miles, if not more. If you want to get a little bit spirited and push on, I have had a few roads freed up and allowed me to enjoy the driving, then of course it starts dropping down. And I think if you are spirited for a good period of time, you'll see it drop well under 200 miles. But everyday driving, you can pretty much rely on being in excess of 200 miles. From that battery, you get 671 horsepower in this car. That battery is the Performance Plus one. That comes as standard on the Turbo. There is a Performance one that you'd get on the 4S. And that translates into 850 Newton meters of torque, which is why you get your 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. And Porsche are keen to point out that that launch that you can do to get that 3 seconds, you can do that time and time and time again until the battery runs out. There's no warming up batteries, there's no trying to look after it, it doesn't limit itself, you just do it over and over again. Foot on the brake.
This is the top.
You ready?
Oh, your foot on the accelerator.
Put your head back.
The front wheels. Oh,
Goodness.
it? No wheel spin.
Nothing.
But I don't think you could actually do it over and over again if you value your eyeballs. It's you just can't describe it. It's like being in a spaceship. When I'm talking about being in a spaceship, this has got the optional noise pack in the back, which is like a speaker, and you can hear it in the car and outside the car. If you think that this all looks a bit space age and a bit computery, wait till you turn the sound on, because it's like, honestly, it's like something out of a computer. But it's addictive. I can't turn it off. I absolutely love it, and I keep playing it, and it's almost like you're changing gear and going up through it. It's amazing. I really like it. But back to the power. All that power needs a bit of trickery under the body to make it work and to get it all down to the tarmac. This is all-wheel drive. You've got a motor in the front and one in the back. The one in the back's a little bit bigger, and it's a 2-speed transmission in the back. And you can almost feel when it switches over. For launch and for firing it off the line, it sits in the first speed of the transmission. And then as you start to speed up, you do feel it's almost as if you've changed gear, but a rapid fire gear change. And then that gives it the legs to get on up to 161 miles an hour. So I believe. There's no way I'm going to find out for you, but I can quite believe it, because you get to 70 miles an hour and the thing's still pulling like a train. There's no sign of it stopping. And that's where the joy in this car is. Of course, we can talk about how all these things, these creature comforts, make it nice in this car. But as soon as you start driving it, you don't care. Anything below the dash line level is irrelevant. You're just looking forward. And you're almost guided with these lovely flared arches at the front that drop the middle of the bonnet away and make it feel a lot narrower than it actually is. Because when you're outside looking at it, this car feels really, really wide. This brings everything in and gives you confidence to drive it, making it feel that bit smaller. And with this timing clock in the middle, put those two together and it almost feels like the foresight and the back sights of a gun. It's like, point it in this direction, fire and go. And it gives you that kind of impression, right, I know I'm going up there, I know exactly what I'm aiming for. And looking up there and far ahead, you really have to, because that far ahead is on you before you know it. And there is all the joy of it. Driving this car like a proper car should be driven on the roads. And I'm not talking about driving it as fast as possible. If you want to drive it as fast as possible, you take it on a track, because you drive cars on tracks very, very differently to what you do on the road. On a track, you fire it up to a corner as fast as you can, you get on the brakes as hard as you can at your braking marker, because while you're braking you're losing time, and then you balance it and you get it back on the power, driving or squaring off the bend as much as possible to fire out the other side and get up to speed as quickly as possible. If you do that on a road, your passengers are going to hate you and fall out with you very quickly, and it's going to be very tiring on a long journey trying to do that just for yourself. On a road you drive completely differently. On a road, you want to read the bends, you want to use acceleration sense. So I will look ahead and I will judge my speed for that corner, and as I approach the corner, I'll be looking for the vanishing point. And where that vanishing point goes will dictate the speed that I've got to try and match that vanishing point going away. I'll sit my car on the outside of the bend to give it the most amount of stability and the most amount of traction going around that bend. And as I come out the other side, I'll bring the speed back on and we'll drive that bend as quickly and as safely as possible. And if you do that time and time again, you'll find that the speed just increases and increases, but you don't know that it's increased because it feels so civilized. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that if I had the Queen sat next to me, she would quite happily sit there with her handbag on her knee, enjoying the views outside, if I was absolutely on it with my driving. And this car inspires that kind of driving. My only one little criticism I'd have is the use of the regenerative braking. Now, when you drive with acceleration sense, you're able to look ahead 200-300 meters, wherever the next bend is, and you're able to judge with the accelerator without ever touching the brake. Because if you're touching the brake, it looks untidy, it unsettles the car, and you don't want to use it very much. So I'm using acceleration sense to get my speed right for the next bend, or for coming up behind a car to match its speed so I can go for an overtake. This, because it's got hardly any regen, doesn't allow you to do that. Now, as standard, there's no regen at all, but the car just rolls. It just keeps rolling when you lift off. You can apply a certain amount of regenerative braking, but it's not like in other EVs where you've got flappy paddles and you can really feel, you can add more and it almost comes to a stop. Some cars do come to a stop when you lift off. It just keeps rolling. And that for me, I would like a bit more control over it. I'd like to be able to have it almost as if I was in a combustion engine car with perhaps a semi-auto box that I could match the gear to the speed and then I can hold it, or in a fully manual car where you get the speed right, you get the gear right, and then you can hold it on those revs knowing that you've got full acceleration sense. Whatever you do with your right foot, it responds in the car and how it drives and how it's balanced. And you just don't get that in here. Doesn't mean it's not balanced, and it doesn't mean that you can't drive it nicely. It just means that perhaps you use those brakes a little bit more than you would like. And those brakes, the first part of the braking, when you first touch them, that's your regen, so that the pads don't actually squeeze on the discs. As you apply more pressure, then the pads become engaged and then you start to apply onto the discs. And these brakes are very, very good. They're certainly going to bring you to a stop in absolutely no distance whatsoever. The coating on whatever they've done to them for the road is brilliant. For me, beyond doubt, this is the best road car I have ever driven. And I've been very, very fortunate. I've driven some very fast sports saloons at some very high speeds. And nothing has given me the enjoyment and the pleasure that this car's given me today. It's so rewarding when you drive it properly, when you read the road properly, and you know that you're enjoying it, you know it's rewarding because nothing else matters. You just switch off to everything else that's going on around you, and it's you, the car, and the road ahead, and that is all you care about. And you go into your own little world, and before you know it, you're 15-20 miles up the road, and your concentration has been so spot on that you can't talk about what's happened, because all you've looked at is the next bend, the next bend, the next bend. And every time you get one of those bends right, you come out with a grin on your face. It is so rewarding. I think what I'm trying to say is this is a proper driver's car that gives you proper driving rewards when you do things right. It's honestly, it's beyond anything I've ever driven before. I absolutely love it. So there you have it, the Porsche Taycan Turbo. Probably the most amount of fun I've ever had in a car on the road. And that's the key to this, because if I come back to my very sensible head, do you really need a turbo to enjoy the roads here in the UK? Absolutely not. This has got more power than you could ever dream of to drive around on the roads here. So actually a 4S, when you consider how much cheaper that is than this, that's probably the sensible buy for me. But do you get bragging rights with a 4S? Can you go in the pub and your mates will say, yeah, but you should have got a turbo? Would they say, yeah, you've got a turbo, but you should have got a Turbo S? Of course they will. You're going to get ribbed, whatever. But if I wanted to save my money and I wanted to have an absolute ball on the roads and I wanted all that luxury inside and these incredible looks, actually the 4S is absolutely perfect. You wouldn't need any more than that. I might add the Performance Plus battery to give me that little bit of extra range, a little bit of extra power, but you just cannot use this on the road. There's just too much power in it. But it's one for you. If you are in the market for a Porsche, let's be honest, money isn't really going to be of interest to you. You just want that car that's going to give you the absolute maximum amount of grins and the maximum amount of performance. And you don't need more than this. Absolutely perfect. Well, there's still a little bit of battery left, so I'm going to leave you there and I'm going to go and run out what's left of this battery before I have to hand it back. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, you take care. I'll see you soon. A massive thank you to Just EVs for letting me use this Porsche today. Not only that, but also thank you for allowing me to get some footage of my dad looking like this.
That's perfect.